for making things better. Face.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right. Ah, that's better.
Hello and welcome to the SJP Wrestling Podcast. It has been a long time since I have said those words, I'll tell you that. And it is good to be back. I am over the moon to be doing this show again. After a little hiatus, shall we say. Real life sometimes gets in the way. It's a pain in the backside sometimes, but it's got to be done. On today's show, we are looking back at Money in the Bank 2011, a pay-per-view that I loved at the time, and my guest today also enjoyed, as it was his selection to look at. And with me today is the guy who is putting up with my nonsense on chain wrestling on a regular basis, one of the head honchos from Radio Tekkers, the Texas gentleman himself, Mr. Tanner. How are we doing, sir?
Oh man, I'm doing so well. It's an honor and a pleasure to actually be here with you doing this review, and I can't thank you enough for the opportunity to be recording with you today.
No, that's what I'm really glad to be talking to you as well. It's the first time we've actually spoken properly just as us, isn't it? I think, you know, I've sort of communicated. So. Yeah, I've communicated with you like through the chat room when you're on air, and you've done the same back with chain wrestling. You've communicated with me that way, and then there's obviously the Radio Tekkers group chat discussion on Twitter that everyone contributes to. I think this is the first time I've ever actually sat and, granted, over the wonderful technology we have in the world at the moment, and over one side of the pond to the other, but it's the first time we've ever really sat, and I suppose in a way, face to face, had a chat, isn't it?
Yeah, this is. I'm really excited about this again because I've watched you make content, you've watched me make content, and now we're making something special together here. I can't imagine what Mags must be feeling like with his two podcasting wives sitting across from each other having a chat without him being involved. So, Mags, if you're listening, cheers.
So, as previously on the SJP Wrestling Podcast, the sort of ethos of the show, the sort of the style of the show is looking back on a lot of old wrestling pay-per-views, moments, and so on. I like to have a few interviews chucked in there as well, but my favourite thing is looking back on old shows. And I always sort of say to people who want to come on the show, there's two ways of doing it. Pick a pay-per-view you love or you remember very, very well, and we'll go back and look at it again. Or pick something you've never seen before, and we can just jump on in and look at it that way. Tanner, you chose Money in the Bank 2011. Very, very topical, I suppose. 10 years this year, and Mr. Punk and so on potentially making a return to wrestling now. Why exactly was it this pay-per-view just was your option?
Well, really kind of along the same lines as what you've described. It's a very topical. It's been 10 years since this pay-per-view landed. There's obviously the rumors as of the time of this recording about CM Punk possibly going to AEW, maybe debuting in AEW in Chicago. I feel like there's AEW might be trying to recreate the vibe that I guess that they saw in Money in the Bank 2011. Obviously, Cody was involved in that pay-per-view. We'll talk about him in just a moment, I'm sure. But yeah, this is one of those shows that really has always stood out to me for more than one way. I got into CM Punk very, very early. He's kind of one of those wrestlers. Everybody's got that one or handful of wrestlers that like kind of flips the switch for them. And I was used to like watching WWE and TNA at the time in the mid 2000s. And then when I was going on the wrestling boards online, like all the forums, everybody's talking about CM Punk versus Samoa Joe matches in Ring of Honor, and like, you know, who is this guy CM Punk that I keep hearing about? And so I get into Ring of Honor. It was kind of like the opening of the door, so to speak, into a larger world of wrestling that I wasn't familiar with at the time. And yeah, like I said, Punk's just one of those guys that's always stuck with me ever since then. Even to the point to where when this show came out, Money in the Bank 2011, I was living with some roommates at the time in my first apartment. They are total non-wrestling fans, do not know about wrestling, aren't into wrestling,
right?
Whatever. But I told one of them, I was like, look, I know you don't care, but there's this guy, CM Punk. I think he's really cool, and I find this story behind this show to be highly intriguing. Mm-hmm. And I explained to him the story, and he's like, well, that is actually pretty cool. Let's check it out. So I feel like I helped convert non-wrestling fans that day by watching Money in the Bank. So like this one just, I don't know, it's just always had a special place in my heart, I guess.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I think CM Punk, around this time, he did that for a lot of people. I think he brought people back into... There's plenty of people I speak to for this show, and just people on Twitter or wherever we talk in general, who say that Punk around this era was what brought them back into wrestling. The crossover appeal, I guess, from this guy who probably in the past would have been told, you're not tall enough, you're not muscular enough, you haven't got the right look. All of a sudden, he at this stage, he's the biggest star in the business.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and like you said, you know, you look at Punk. I mean, we're looking at Punk with rose-tinted glasses now, right? But like, you look at Punk back then, and you're like, I mean, he's kind of cool. He's got he's got like that punk rock look. Like his hair is cut a certain way, or he's got it slicked back. He does the mutton chops sometimes with his facial hair. So like he changes up his look constantly. He's covered in tattoos. You know, not a lot of the guys that really broke it big are covered in tattoos at that time. And he just has a way of going about things. He has a way of handling himself and carrying himself in this confidence that I think that you just didn't find with anybody else outside of maybe John Cena or Randy Orton at the time. For me, and I may be stretching here, I don't know. For me though, nobody had threatened like the establishment in the way that CM Punk did with Vince McMahon. Not even Stone Cold Steve Austin really held Vince McMahon hostage in the way, storyline-wise, that CM Punk did. And maybe even a little bit in the way where, in non-kayfabe sense, that CM Punk did. So, like I said, I'm a huge fan of his. I feel as though this is just a very important show to me and my wrestling fandom personally.
Yeah, I totally understand. I mean, we'll get into the pay-per-view in a moment, but I watch the main event probably 2 or 3 times a year. I love the crowd reaction. I love the music that Punk's using. I love everything about it. It's just superb, and it is, I think, a really important moment in WWE's time scale in general. It leads to building up to this. Obviously, we've had the pipe bomb segment where Punk, as he says, he breaks the fourth wall and tells sort of let's slip with a few things that, you know, sort of peek behind the curtain potentially, which he never really got in WWE to that level before. So that to me is really spectacular at the time. You get the brilliant segments with McMahon trying to negotiate new contracts with Punk, all the build up to this event. Then after this, you get Punk coming back using Cult of Personality, the title match with Cena, and it just develops from there, and he's an absolute megastar at this stage. So I think this is a really sort of pinnacle evening, a really big moment in the whole time frame of WWE and Punk's career in general, I feel. The pay-per-view itself then initially broadcast on July 17th 2011 from the Allstate Arena in Chicago, which is very, very much CM Punk country, isn't it? As we can tell by the crowd. There's 14,815 listed as being in the building, and the buy rate was 195,000, which isn't a massive, massive number. But at the same time, I think it was a time when fans were just starting to come back, so those numbers would improve over the next few months with what they were doing. We start the show with a really great opening video package, don't we? Explaining the whole Punk angle, I guess, and snippets and cuts of Punk saying things in his interviews and his pipe bomb moments and so on. There's no one in wrestling or in lots of different forms of entertainment that do these video packages as well as the WWE, is there?
No, I mean, they really and truly have made it their own since the beginning, right? Like, I don't remember a time when WCW did a video package as well as WWE. I can't think of a TNA video package that's ever been done as well as WWE. No. There's been few on the indie circuit that I can think of, but generally speaking, WWE does the most. If they do anything right, they do the most to get you bought into a show with a really nice video package.
Yeah, and their use of music and so on is always absolutely brilliant. Again, we get a similar package just for the main event. We'll touch upon it quickly now, just whilst it's in my mind. I actually called my youngest daughter downstairs to come and watch the video package and the entrances to the main event. Okay. And she's not seen this before. Oh. And she's wrestling crazy. She's AEW crazy. She hears me talk about CM Punk all the time, to the point where my wife banned the mention of his name in the house for a period because she got that fed up with me. Whenever a show was in Chicago, I'd be like, "Oh, what if Punk comes back?" And it got to the stage where my wife just got her hair off of me. So
you make a special moment out of it. You get a Chicago style pizza. You make it.
That's it.
Nice.
And the video packages, I think, are so good. My little girl, who, when this happened, would have been 1 year old, so she's got no clue about it at all. She knew the whole story and what was going on just by their recap package. And I think that's, again, a big difference between WWE and, as you said, WCW back in the day. I watch a lot of old WCW for certain events and certain podcasts and so on. And when you look at their video packages, obviously, they're been out of business a long time by this stage, but you look at their video packages, they don't recap anywhere near as well, do they? It's almost like you don't need to be watching the weekly television with WWE. Just watch the pay-per-view and the recap, and you're done, I guess.
Right. It's almost like the Raws and SmackDowns are just a vehicle for advertisements, whereas you could just literally watch the pay-per-views and be okay with it. But yeah, I mean, the storytelling that they do in their video packages is often fantastic, obviously, but especially for this one, I feel as though for the video package here for Money in the Bank 2011, they had to set the right tone. They had to set the right message about how important the main event is, what it means for WWE as a whole, for you as a fan to watch this show, that this is a very high stakes evening, and they did a really good job at projecting not only the importance of the match, but the importance of CM Punk, right? This night is literally, and I can't think of too many other occasions where it's like this, but this night is literally pretty much built around him. Every little facet that they did is built around CM Punk all the way up to the main event. Yeah,
and you can tell this with the crowd, because all the way through the event, some suitable moments and some maybe not so suitable, we're getting that traditional CM Punk chant that we are still hearing in arenas today, even though at time of recording, Punk hasn't wrestled for 7-8 years, and people are still chanting his name. So it's really spectacular how he, I suppose, got an attachment with the fans, I guess, on that level. Mm-hmm. Something I noticed today, and again, I said I've watched the main event and bits of this show a couple of times a year. It wasn't literally until today, watching it back, that I realised that the Titatron, the big screen at the front, is a briefcase.
Yeah.
I've never honestly. I'm sat there. I'm sat there. And I put it on. I just went, huh? And I had to rewind it a little bit. That's a bloody briefcase. Have I not seen that before?
They do little things like that. They hide it really well. Like, I mean, I didn't notice that for a long time myself. Rewatching it yesterday, you know, I mean, you do get the little props and everything that they set up around the ring, and you know, we're used to seeing Money in the Bank with them putting the ladders down the aisle, but it is those little nice little Easter eggs almost that they put in there for you.
Yeah, that's it. I was like, how have I never noticed that before? That's insane. Our opening contest is the first Money in the Bank ladder match. This one is for the SmackDown title or the World Heavyweight title contract. And we have Cody Rhodes, Heath Slater, Justin Gabriel, Kane, Sin Cara, Sheamus, Wade Barrett, and Daniel Bryan. Now, I'm not going to lie. When they started coming out at the start, I'm thinking this is a real messy ragtag bunch of guys, isn't it? I mean, you don't, Kane's in a lot of ladder matches, which surprises me, but I'm always still shocked to see him in them because of his size and the way he wrestles. And then you've got the likes of Heath Slater, Justin Gabriel, who I suppose never really did anything of substance, I guess, in their careers. Just really a real ragtag bunch, I guess. But yeah, it surprised me. I really enjoyed this.
This was a pretty good quality show, I feel. This one here for me, to kick off this show and to kick it off with this match, it is surprising because you've got 4 different members of the Nexus that then went on to, was it 3 or is it 4? I know you named Wade Barrett, you named off Justin Gabriel, Heath Slater. And then I guess you could count Daniel Bryan if you wanted to. I guess he's like OG Nexus, kind of, sort of. But like, you've got those 4 in the match, and you're kind of like, okay, well, I get Daniel Bryan. I even get Kane to the extent. But like Justin Gabriel, Heath Slater, Wade Barrett, that's a little bit of a roll of the dice. They're obviously trying to get you bought into the new guys at the time. You know, they're trying to make the Nexus members probably get a sizable push at least to try and recoup on their investment. But yeah, no, this was a ton of fun. Cody was really engaging. Daniel Bryan was really engaging, and I think that maybe is also helped propped up by like Chicago is. I mean, and this hurts as a Texan to say this, but Chicago is kind of like that quintessential wrestling town almost, even in my mind, even more so than New York, because with Chicago, it's like the intersection between the Midwest and the East Coast, and wrestling just passes through Chicago all the time, whether it's Ring of Honor, whoever, WWE, AEW now, whoever, but for Daniel Bryan, you know, people recognize him the same way that they recognize CM Punk because of how often Daniel Bryan had been in Chicago prior to WWE. So he himself gets a really good reaction here from the crowd.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned Cody there as well, and this is something that is more of a personal thing for me than I suppose a definite rule or whatever, I guess. But I got a big issue with wrestlers who wear trunks and no knee pads. I think it just I think it just looks weird. If you're in trunks, and obviously you get different styles and shapes and sizes of boots, don't you? So if you're in trunks and you got, say, smaller wrestling boots on, and you're in knee pads, you look like a wrestler. If you're in trunks and those smaller boots with no knee pads, to me you just look like a bloke in your pants. You know, it just, I've just never really, it just looks weird. It just looks really strange.
Except me, world,
exactly.
Here I am in all of my glory. The no knee pads thing is a little bit strange. I mean, there's still dudes who do it now, I guess, but like, I don't know. I feel like the long pants is a better move for Cody now.
Yeah, definitely. We get a few Well, I suppose both sides of the coin here, I guess. We get the moments that stand out in a ladder match or Money in the Bank match with spectacular stunts, including like Sin Cara getting powerbombed through that ladder. And
yeah,
I mean, I thought the guy's dead, isn't he? Surely he gets carried out and everything. It's not a good look. A really cool Doomsday device, the old Legion of Doom move from Kane and Sheamus on Daniel Bryan. That was a lovely spot there. But then we also get moments. I suppose it's the nature of the beast because there's a lot of moving parts in these matches, aren't there? With so many people and people having to queue up the next moments that they're supposed to be working towards. But it takes me out of the match a touch when you get people standing there waiting to get hit. Or there was a moment where I think it was Justin Gabriel, I may be wrong, but I think it was Justin Gabriel, who was stood on the outside of the ring holding the ladder on the apron, waiting for the baseball slide to hit him. But he was there for only a couple of seconds, but that couple of seconds really sort of took me out the moment because he's obviously waiting for his opponent to kick him. And it kind of ruins my suspension of disbelief, I think. Does that make any sense?
No, yeah, it makes total sense. Obviously, these guys are not entirely actors. I wish that they did have some like acting classes or improv classes down at the old NXT facility in Orlando. That way, so like maybe he's like fiddling with the ladder just to buy time, or like maybe reading the instructions off the side of it. I think that'd be fun. But like, yeah, like do something like to not make yourself look so obvious. Yeah, I totally know what you're saying.
Or at least maybe have the camera cut differently. I mean, WWE bloody love their camera cuts now, don't they? You could do something. The live crowd are always going to pick up on certain aspects, and you hope the atmosphere of the live crowd maybe hides that for them. Watching on television, I think the cameramen and the direction can really help out the performers in these scenarios. The same goes for when in the later Money in the Bank match when Evan Bourne performs a shooting star press off the top of a ladder to the floor. That I felt there's a lot of people stood milling around waiting to catch him, as is normal. But they kind of hid it a little bit with the way the camera angle was before it happened. I think maybe they could have helped a couple of the guys out in this match more with the clever sort of camera angles and the shooting of certain moments, if you know what I mean. Yeah,
absolutely. It does feel as though maybe they were a little bit slower on the draw on the opening match for whatever reason. Who knows? But I mean, there were really good moments of spectacle still in this match that were caught well. This is not maybe as spectacular as some of the other moments that are in the match, but near the end when Daniel Bryan is basically, he's working submissions on the ladder. I was like, oh man, like this is actually like pretty cool stuff as far as like a wrestling, like just being a wrestling fan watching that. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool. But like it also felt like it was shot very well too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, ultimately we have Daniel Bryan getting the win when we have Cody, Daniel Bryan, and Wade Barrett on top of the ladder all together, and they sort of exchanging strikes, and eventually they all kind of fall away, leaving Daniel Bryan to collect the briefcase and win to a really good reaction from the crowd. There's a big pop for this, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. Like I said, Daniel Bryan, he's very well known in Chicago, even prior to WWE, so I was really pleased with the reaction that he got. Obviously this is a big moment for him in his career in WWE as well, so it makes a lot of sense. One thing I did want to touch on before we exit out of this match here, on commentary, Michael Cole is just laying waste to Daniel Bryan's reputation. And it does not hold up very well in the modern sense of things. And there is also a tad bit of irony as the night goes on when they start doing the Be a Star advertisements.
Yeah.
And they have Daniel Bryan in there and they're talking about anti-bullying and everything like that. It's very... It's kind of cringe But yeah, I mean, I guess I was just like, really, like, we're this is drawing focus away from the match, like, and I don't know, like, obviously this is Vince McMahon saying these things into Michael Cole's ear, right? And like, oh, he's a nerd, and like, like, what a doofus, or whatever they say about him. Like, they're running him down throughout the whole entire match. It's kind of a turn off. But like, you can easily tell when it's Cole and when it's Cole as Vince, if that makes sense. And it just like, that was the one thing that kind of ruined the match for me.
No, I can get on board with that. I mean, we'll talk about the commentary team now, I suppose, since you brought it up. It was a weird time, I think, because Cole was almost dipping his toe in the water as trying to be like a heel character, and he wrestled Jerry Lawler around this time, I think. So then you've got Jerry Lawler, who traditionally is the sort of edgier, almost heel type on the commentary team for so many years alongside Jim Ross. Yeah. He's now all of a sudden being viewed more like a baby face, being viewed more favourably, I guess, because with legend status as well, it's difficult to boo these guys when they've been around as long as they have. And then you got Booker T, who, let's be honest, I don't think commentary is his forte, is it?
I don't think so. I feel as though this was maybe a better night for him than other nights, but I don't know. Booker T does not necessarily come across the guy, even though he has a ton of charisma. I think he's better at talking on the mic now than what he ever was as a wrestler. And I think this is still him trying to break into that. As far as like putting wrestlers at the commentary booth, there would have been a ton of other wrestlers I would have named before Booker T. But I think that he held his own at least tonight, and he does get better as the show goes on. Yeah, fair point. After this, we have Vince, John Laurinaitis, and a lawyer arriving because they're still adamant they're going to get Punk to sign that pesky contract, aren't they? And that brings us to our next match, which is Brie Bella versus Kelly Kelly for the Divas title. There's not much really to go on here, I don't think. I mean, both ladies, you can see, work quite hard. I was never a big fan of Kelly Kelly as an in-ring competitor myself. One thing that did stand out to me, though, was when the Bellas came out, I couldn't tell which one was which. Now, nowadays, or when you see them in later runs, you can there's various differences to be able to separate which twin is which. But at this stage in their career, I couldn't tell which one was which. Yeah, it was it was a decent. Well, I'll touch on the match first. It was a decent enough match. I think if I recall correctly, I think this had to do with a Maxim photo shoot that Kelly Kelly was a part of, and there was some jealousy as well as her being the champion. I think that was the story. So not because a wrestler is chasing winning a title, then it's about a bloody photo. Yeah, it's about a photo. This is very much still Divas era territory, unfortunately, as far as the story arc for women is concerned. So it is just like one of those things where it's like but yeah, I thought that the heel work by the Bellas was really, really good. And as far as them like being indistinguishable goes, like it's very much one of those things where I think they hit the nail on the head by getting them to like dress slightly differently, so you can be like, oh, that's that's Brie, right? But yeah, very much the Noel and Liam Gallagher of the WWE at the time. I don't think they've got anywhere near the level of talent that the Gallaghers have, to be fair. Perhaps not. The only other real sort of the only other sort of note that I have on this match is that the finish kind of comes out of nowhere with a funny looking kind of standing leg drop effort from Kelly Kelly to no reaction from the crowd and no reaction from the three guys on commentary either. Everyone just kind of goes, well, that was that then, and they move on. Yeah, it's it's just not a very good match. No. And I'll say that as far as it's being like, I hate to say it's more on one than the other, but it does feel as though it's more on Kelly Kelly as far as her, I guess not being as astute of a wrestler, perhaps. Yeah, if you had to pass a match here on this show, ladies and gentlemen, this would be the match to pass on.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. From, I suppose, two attractive, slim young ladies, we go to the other end of the scale, very much so, in our next contest. Two massive burly blokes with the Big Show versus Mark Henry. And I'm not going to lie, when I saw they run this little... I try and watch these shows back cold, I guess. I literally put it on and press play. I don't look at the card beforehand. Yeah. Some of them I can always remember. You know, WrestleMania 17, I could probably run through the card right now because I've seen it so many times. But this event, it's very much the main event I go back and watch. So everything else on the undercard, some of it I could remember, some of it I couldn't. This match I couldn't remember until they literally started running the promo package for it and they started coming to the ring. I'm not going to lie, Big Show versus Mark Henry, my heart sank a little bit, and I was like, should I just go make a cup of tea? It's it didn't inspire me right away, but to be fair, they partially won me over by the end.
Yeah, I mean, this was not a bad match per se. Like, I really did feel a little bit discouraged watching it, and then the video package came up, and I was like, oh, okay, well, this might be interesting. They're really selling like these two behemoths squaring off one-on-one, and I've met Mark Henry before.
Okay.
And he is a rather large gentleman. He's a very strong gentleman. And I'm picturing him and the Big Show kind of in the ring as they're doing this and trying to envision, okay, well, I know how big Mark Henry is. How big is Big Show? Big Show being very, very big himself. I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. This is interesting. Decent enough match, I feel like.
I mean, if you didn't know exactly how big these guys were, by God, Michael Cole made sure he told you.
Dude, he gave you all the stats.
Oh, he gave thigh measurements.
Yeah, he gave you the thighs. I was like, that's a weird, go-to right away. Like, I don't know if you want to be like, yeah, their thighs are measured in this way.
Yeah, and Jerry Lawler straight away jumped on it. How do you measure a thigh?
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, and then the chest and the shoe size, because obviously that's very, very relevant in a wrestling contest, how big your boots are. To me, it starts very slowly. You're not going to see lots of, I suppose, technical catch-can wrestling from these two. It's two big brutes.
Oh, yeah.
Just beating the piss out of each other, isn't it? It starts relatively slowly, just two guys, massive fellas, smacking each other around. They end up outside, and Mark Henry knocks the steps into Big Show's knee, which kind of turns the tide in his favor. But he does this by hitting potentially the lowest, smallest, slowest dropkick I've ever seen in my life. His body obviously drops because he's doing a dropkick. His body goes down, but his feet, I think, get about a yard off the floor.
Yeah, I mean, if that, I mean, it was very, it's very low. But it was. I was at least impressed that he like mentally went in that direction and was like, "Yes, I'm gonna do this drop kick real quick." Yeah. There was some impressive feats of strength. Obviously, like the world's strongest slam. Being done.
That was brilliant.
That was really, really good. Obviously, the finish is, I mean, you can take it or leave it. But the CM Punk chants by the crowd, they were well into wanting to get to the main event. I think sitting through this match here.
Yeah, definitely. And you're right, Tanner. You're spot on that we have two world's strongest slams, two splashes. Mark Henry wins. Roughly 6 minutes on the clock, I think it was. So it didn't overstay its welcome. They got in, did what they needed to do. Afterwards, Mark Henry gave a beat down to Big Show and used a chair to bust up his leg and so on. Yeah. And that was that. So I suppose it furthered the storyline between them. It served its purpose. Didn't overstay its welcome. I was okay with it.
Yeah, if you're a sucker for a good injury angle, stick around to the end because it's a good time. Yeah. Big Show really sold the heck out of the beatdown that Mark Henry gave him post match, and obviously the crowd The crowd wanted no part of it, but
they didn't care.
They were, they sent down the EMTs and they were like struggling with the Big Show, like because he's so big. But yeah, this was fun.
They sent a little sort of golf cart with a platform on the back, kind of effort, didn't they, for him to get on rather than a stretcher as well.
Yes.
Yeah, brilliant stuff.
Oh my god!
After that chaos, we have our second Money in the Bank ladder match. It may feel like, to anyone listening, that we're sort of skipping through the undercard relatively quickly. There is a reason for that, because the undercard does pass by relatively quickly. I mean, we look at the match times. The Money in the Bank match was 25 minutes, granted. But the next 3 matches all clock in 15 minutes or under. Sorry, the next 4 matches click in before we get to the main event. And the main event takes up, well, I think on the network, it's like 47 minutes of the end of the program. So the undercard is very quick getting to the reason we're here, I guess. The Raw Money in the Bank ladder match for a WWE Championship contract is between Alex Riley, Evan Bourne, Jack Swagger, Kofi Kingston from Ghana currently, apparently, The Miz, R-Truth, Rey Mysterio, and Alberto Del Rio. This has got a really unique start, hasn't it? Because they all just start grabbing ladders and just stand in the ring holding ladders, waiting for everyone else. It's quite the visual, isn't it?
Yeah, they all kind of make a beeline. Truth being stuck in the ring with a very small ladder, trying to go for it. Yeah, there's a little nice comedic touch there with R-Truth at the beginning. But yeah, this was also a little bit of a blast from the past. We talked about how in the first Money in the Bank match it was like more Nexus centric. I guess at the time it would have been like the core, I guess is what they were going by, and then they broke up. It was a whole thing. But this one here, they seem to have just tried to build the Raw Money in the Bank ladder match functionally. Like in the way it's like, okay, we've got Jack Swagger, he can be your power guy. We've got Alberto Del Rio, he's your finesse guy, right? The Miz and Alex Riley, they have a rivalry right now, so we're going to put them in. And then we've got Kofi, Mysterio, R-Truth, and Evan Bourne, and they can do some flying and some really cool spots. So let's try and like make something out of this. So it felt less thrown together than the SmackDown one. But it also clocked in a lot shorter too, which is really, really interesting.
Yeah, it was a good 10 minutes shorter, wasn't it? I don't know if they were sort of concerned about running out of time, getting halfway through the show, but I can't say they would be. There's still plenty of television time or pay-per-view time available to them. At the very beginning, before we even get to the beginning where they all target Del Rio, Alex Riley, I completely forgot about that fella. But what an entrance theme he has. What an entrance theme. That is a banger, isn't it?
Yeah, he's got a good theme. He was surprisingly well received by the crowd. Like you look at like who all is on like the card and who all's in the match and who they've cheered for so far and who they've booed so far tonight. And Alex Riley wouldn't have been on my list to get a pop, but he certainly did here, and I was thoroughly impressed.
Yeah, I think he's just come out of the feud with the Miz, hasn't he? Because he was like the Miz's second or the Miz's assistant, and he parted ways. And yeah. So I think that's the kind of you part almost like Virgil with $1 Million Man back in the day. You part ways with the bad guy who's in charge, and you got to kind of sink or swim, and the charisma wasn't quite there, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think he had the Vince look. I think that he was in, with the Miz, so there was a little bit of that rub, I guess, because of Miz's high profile, hey, let's try and do something with Alex Riley. But outside of him having this feud with the Miz, there's really not much else that we knew about Alex Riley, right? I mean, they were partners. I think they even may have been tag champions at one time. I'll check that.
I'll have to look that up. You might be right, actually. It does ring a bell.
But yeah, they seemingly did not have much else for Alex Riley to do after this feud with The Miz.
Yeah, it's a shame. Everyone targets Del Rio early on with their ladders straight off the bat. They all go for Del Rio. Del Rio goes out the ring and they all start throwing ladders at him. Everybody ganging up on Del Rio. It's almost like they sort of telegraphed what we would find out about him in later years, isn't it? I guess. But he gets some great spots. The aforementioned Evan Bourne shooting star press on the outside. That was a real sort of wow moment for me because the height he got from that. Moments of people battling away and swing back and forth, and a few moments where they kind of the ladders actually do tip over, don't they? And they fall away. Yeah. There's some neat spots here for sure. I think there's also an injury angle somewhat early on where the Miz has to leave the match, and then he makes a grand comeback, which also resonated well with the crowd, even though they liked Alex Riley so much. So like I think the crowd just wanted to have fun, which is obviously brilliant. So yeah, I mean the Miz leaving and then him having to come back and tries to prevent Alex Riley from winning. That was fun. Some good spots from Rey Mysterio, who got booed after trying to stop the Miz. There's no reason to boo Rey Mysterio, but he gets booed for preventing the Miz from winning this match, and I think the crowd was just wanting to have some fun tonight. I think very irony heavy crowd, I think. Yeah, that was quite funny because obviously the Miz has always been incredibly disliked. So hearing them boo Mysterio for that, because Mysterio's like, I don't think he's ever worked as a bad guy in his whole life. So I never recalled Rey Mysterio heel turn ever. No, it's almost Ricky Steamboat levels of goodness there.
Absolutely. Good comparison. I like that.
Yeah, it's right in my wheelhouse. That is proper old school, The finish comes when everybody on top of the ladder, everyone's like on top of a ladder, battling away, trying to grab the briefcase. And it's similar, I suppose, to the other Money in the Bank match earlier in the show, but that one only had the 3 people at the top. This one's got all the competitors. People start getting picked off one by one, falling away. And so we're left with Del Rio and Rey Mysterio. And rather than punching or whatever, brilliantly, Del Rio swipes the mask off him. So straight away, Rey covers his face up, and it's enough of a distraction to cause Del Rio to be able to get the briefcase eventually after they both kind of take a tumble and so on. I thought this was quite a unique, clever finish.
Yeah, I think it was well done. They've seemed to have repeated this a lot over the years. So if this is the first time that you're watching the show, or if you're going back like we are and rewatching the show after a while, then yeah, I mean, you might be like, oh yeah, I've kind of seen that before. But like for the time, it was actually really unique finish here. And Del Rio, I mean, as much as in the modern day, he's very much disliked. I feel like at the time he was the right pick to win this match. Yeah. Especially considering the other people involved. Rey, I mean, it didn't feel like the right move for him just yet, even though he would get a significant opportunity shortly after this. Yeah, I feel like you had to put it on Del Rio. Alex Riley was getting the push, but nowhere near, the caliber that some of the others were offering. Del Rio had to win this one.
I think Del Rio could have been something really special. He had a great look. He had the charisma. He was good on the microphone. He was a good enough wrestler, a good enough worker as well. With that sort of Latin audience, he could have been something huge, I think, if he wasn't just such a dick and just kind of blew it all. I suppose, you know.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely got some demons that he needs to deal with, and yeah, it's very, very sad the way that it all kind of fell apart. But he did it to himself ultimately, and that's I think that makes it all the worse. I think.
Yeah, I agree. So Del Rio is your Money in the Bank briefcase holder. Bear that in mind because that does pop up a bit later on. After this, we get what I think is a little bit of an overlooked contest, because of the main event being as big and as brilliant and as well remembered as it is. I think this kind of gets lost in the shuffle or overlooked somewhat. This is a bit of a low-key banger for me. Christian faces Randy Orton, who is the World Heavyweight Champion, for the World Heavyweight title, with the added stipulation that if Orton gets disqualified, Christian can win the title that way as well.
Yeah.
They go 12 and a half minutes. And yes, okay, it's very much a WWE-style match. It's very, very much literally WWE ticking the boxes for what they do. But I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, this was really interesting. I think this is the third in a trilogy of matches that Christian and Randy Orton have here over the course of the summertime. And they may even continue to feud after this one. I'm not 100%. I'll have to go back and check my records. But what's funny here is that we've talked all show about kind of how this match or this show rather 10 years on, how it looks now, and how much irony it is that it's 10 years after that Punk is possibly rumored going to AEW, and kind of like, you know, all of the allure of Chicago and, you know, all this, you know, with this show here. But outside of the main event, this match here also has a lot to look at. Obviously, Randy Orton, still a pretty big star in a lot of ways, one of the bigger stars that WWE has. Christian has, you know, he's now left WWE and has gone to AEW, whereas this was maybe soon after here, Money in the Bank 2011 wise, he had just been coming back from TNA. You know, to kind of do this run here with Randy Orton. Edge then had just retired. Edge now has come back into the fold. So there's a lot of really interesting things that you can go back in and compare notes on here for this match. I would also say stylistically, this match is really, really interesting because you have Randy Orton, who is obviously a supremely talented wrestler, but one who is notorious for, I'm not going to say laziness, but you have to kind of like, I guess he has to be coaxed. It feels like he has to have something that he needs to, that feels important, that he needs to like really get up for, right?
Yeah, I 100% agree. Yeah.
And on the other end, you have Christian, who has been, you know, this reputable, like, work machine, basically, like somebody who's like, you know, supremely gifted as far as his work rate is concerned. And yeah, I feel like these two really actually fit each other very, very well for this match.
Yeah, totally. We get all the, I suppose, the Orton high spots, the ticking of all the boxes. We get the draping DDT off the ropes. We get an RKO attempt again and again. The scoop, sort of almost snap power slam he does when somebody runs. Oh, that is just fantastic. The timing of that and just so good.
His drop kick.
The height he gets on that. Yeah, that's like Mr. Perfect quality of drop kick. And Mr. Perfect's got, you know, unreal.
Yeah, everybody raves about Okada's drop kicks, and those are great. But I mean, Randy Orton drops a pretty good drop kick himself. So I'd love to see a drop kick contest between those two.
Yeah, just random targets on a wall or something.
Yeah, exactly. Moving, pivoting around.
Yeah.
Like, you gotta hit it.
Yeah, and again, it's very WWE style match, but there's nothing wrong with that when it's done as well as this. It is superb. the whole disqualification stipulation is obviously going to come into play. They're playing on Randy Orton having issues controlling his temper. Christian's trying to tempt him into getting disqualified very early on by giving him a chair and turning his back, which I thought was a lovely little touch in the storytelling there. We end up with, rather disgustingly, Christian spitting in Orton's face, which causes Orton to lose this rag a bit, which you can fully understand. Start punching. The referee's got to drag Orton off Christian. And then I think Christian becomes the only wrestler to ever win a world title by getting kicked in the bollocks. I don't think there's many others that have done that.
That sounds about right. Nakamura came really, really close against AJ Styles when they had their
true.
feud.
That's true.
But I think Christian is the only one. That's a very interesting stat that not a lot of people.
I can't
really
think
get.
of any. If anyone else can think of any wrestlers who won a world title by getting a hit in the balls, please let us know on Twitter. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Orton goes crazy afterwards and RKO's Christian on a table a couple of times, but ultimately Christian walks out with that beautiful big gold belt and begins, in my mind, a slightly overdue title run. I think he was good enough to be in that spot, so it's great to see. I'm a big Christian fan, so yeah.
I feel like he always got his due elsewhere. He was always appreciated elsewhere outside of WWE more, and that's really it's a really kind of tragic thing almost, is that he built his bones in WWE and he's really kind of always been a bit of a WWE guy, but when he leaves elsewhere, he's just super celebrated and beloved. So yeah, I mean, this was definitely well deserved on his part. Congratulations to Christian on this win here. But yeah, I wish he had more of these moments for sure.
Yeah, I agree. So that brings us to, I suppose, why we're here. The main event of the evening. Yeah. CM Punk challenging John Cena for the WWE Championship. Punk's contract is expiring at midnight on the night of the show, we're told. If Punk wins and walks out with the WWE Championship, Vince McMahon's made it very clear John Cena will be fired. This is just fantastic from start to finish, isn't it? The video package beforehand really sets the mood. The fact that when they come back from the video package, they just let the crowd go for a good 30 seconds before anyone's music hits, and you can just hear the CM Punk building, and the building is, the arena is shaking. And then Kill Switch starts, CM Punk's music at the time, and the place just comes unglued. And then it comes unglued again when they actually see him. It's also, you get the double pop, and Tanner, this is just absolutely bloody insane, isn't it, this crowd reaction?
Well, and oh man, this is one of those things where it's just done so well, and you gotta tip your hat to CM Punk, because he did this all so right. There's the delay of him even coming out. The crowd builds, as you said. It gets very, very loud in that arena, and like you said, this Fire Burns by Killswitch Engage hits, and you get the opening riff going, and it's not like that music hits and then CM Punk just runs out and is like, surprise, it's me, right? he strolls out, which is actually really really kind of telling. It's almost like it's like very, very, I don't want to call it villainous, but there is this coolness to it.
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
This almost like a disregard of the I guess of what's going on around him. Very, very cool in this moment, and he's just kind of strolling out. And then he takes in the crowd. He looks at his wrist, does the "It's clobbering time."
Yeah.
And then the crowd just erupts more. And then he goes in and is then embracing this moment as he's coming to the arena. He gets in the ring. He's on the turnbuckles, and he's waving to the crowd to get louder. He hops into the ring. He's applauding the crowd as he walks around the ring. He goes out of the ring and then hugs his mom and his sister, and then right next to them is Colt Cabana and Ace Steel from his Ring of Honor days.
Yeah.
It's like, as far as entrances go, this is probably one of the best entrances that you'll ever see at a wrestling show, bar none, period.
Yeah, it's absolutely superb. I could literally just watch the entrance again and again and again. I'm a big Kill Switch fan anyway, so that's a bonus for me. But it's just so good. I mean, and again, along with... I'm not saying he's necessarily as good in the ring as Michaels and Flair, but Punk is up there as one of my all-time favorites alongside Michaels and Flair. Michaels and Flair are probably just a smidge above, but Punk is one of my all-time favorites. So seeing this again and again, I just absolutely love it. On the other side of that coin, sorry, go on.
Oh, I was just gonna real quick before we move on to his opposite number here in this match. I think that it's really intriguing that you bring up Michaels and Flair alongside CM Punk, because I think the one thing that all three of them have in common, maybe less so with Michaels, but not to his detriment, I think they are all supremely smart wrestlers. They're just like their number one attribute is not how physical they are, how big they are, what their moveset is, or their strength or their speed. It's really about how smart they are. And this is definitely a prime example, this match here, of CM Punk proving that.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. I mean, I suppose all three of those guys, none of them are giants, none of them are muscle mountains, none of them are 6'7" or anything like that. But yet they all, different eras, different times, in different ways, were at the top of their game, top of the business. So yeah, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. Cena comes out to one of the biggest choruses of boos I think I've ever heard. That was phenomenal. And again, this moment, my youngest daughter was watching with me, and I was sort of half watching her out the corner of my eye as she sat on the sofa next to me to see her reactions to this. And when the boos for Cena started, her face just dropped. She couldn't believe the almost the hatred that was coming his way. It was just, again, fantastic atmosphere, just brilliant stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, they did a great job of not only building CM Punk, but making John Cena, because of CM Punk's pipe bomb promo, they made him the enemy, right? They made him the enemy of Chicago that night. He stood for everything that they did not want, and that the crowd that was then coming into WWE, this smarter crowd that knew of Daniel Bryan and knew of CM Punk before they even hit WWE, they looked at John Cena and was like, this is the guy that we're tired of. This is what needs to change. This is very much a thing in time, because 10 years later, John Cena comes back at the end of Money in the Bank and gets one of the biggest pop reactions that I've ever heard. But it is very, very, very different. A lot was made 5 years before this event when they did, what was it? The ECW One Night Stand event where John Cena faced Rob Van Dam. It was at the New York Hammerstein Ballroom.
And again, link with Money in the Bank, because Rob Van Dam had that title shot because he'd won the ladder match, hadn't he?
Exactly. Obviously, very similar situation. John Cena's headed into territory that does not like him. They fully reject what John Cena stands for. But this here at Money in the Bank 2011 is that reaction, maybe not as visceral, but that same reaction on steroids, because that the arena that they're at in Chicago is easily probably at least 4 or 5 times larger than the Hammerstein Ballroom.
Yeah.
So when you hear John Cena getting booed, it's echoing all the way around the arena.
Oh, without a doubt, it's great. Even the introductions that are made, then you get the same reactions to the competitors there, and then we actually start. Despite being in this cauldron of passion and noise and excitement, we actually start with some pretty standard, straightforward actual wrestling, don't we?
Yeah.
A few headlocks, a few counters, but I think that sort of telegraphs how long they're going to go, because the match clock's in at a good 35 minutes, and then you've got the afters tagged on the end as well. So they're out there for quite a while, and they do start relatively slow, but they build and they build and they build, and by the end you're on the edge of your seat with how these two absolute masters at their game are telling this incredible story.
Yeah, this is a really interesting case study because a lot of people they look to and I say this here because doing my homework on doing for this show here, I went and watched some of the segments from when CM Punk did the StarCast show for AEW a few years back. Well, AEW. And quote unquote. And he was talking about how when they were kicking off the match, as per tradition, the heel would typically call the match, like the veteran. So CM Punk was talking about how, he gets Cena in the headlock, and then he hears Cena trying to start call the match and the moves that go, and Punk's like, I'm calling this one. This is I've got this. This is fine, John. And John, surprised, kind of accepts it and goes along with Punk here. People talk up how this is like one of those defining moments in CM Punk's career. This is also a defining match for John Cena. He really comes out here and tells, maybe not with all the moves, right? But he does tell a great match in terms of his desperation to win, and not just win for Vince or for WWE necessarily, but just kind of win for himself because of how personal Punk got in the feud, it seemed. Yeah. Cena using his dominance, physically, his strength, his speed, he all the way around, he was better physically than Punk, but Punk just kept finding ways to work around it.
We get very, very quickly we get a one of the most ridiculous WWE lines of commentary I think I've ever heard, where Cole tries to explain the audience reaction and the adoration for Punk being down to brainwashing, because that's what Punk does. Just shut up, Cole. Just nonsense, Cena's in control relatively early on for a period, and he's getting chance of you can't wrestle and so on. Well, I actually think he's doing quite a good job out there. And then we start upping the tempo, upping the pace a bit, don't we? We get a crossbody from CM Punk from the top that kind of misses to a degree, and he hits Cena's knees, which looks like it's then bothering Cena throughout the rest of the match. There's a vertical suplex from inside the ring to outside to the floor, which was quite spectacular. There's another great pop as well, where Cena goes for the whole "you can't see me" 5-knuckle shuffle fist drop moment, and as he leans over, Punk kicks him in the face to stop it happening, and the crowd just explode again, don't they?
Yeah. That was another interesting thing that I rewatched from StarCast. Is there's a moment in the interview where Punk is explaining, how he would discuss these things with John about the match and how to set it up and the layout of everything, and he mentions a part in it where he breaks down to John the psychology of the 5-knuckle shuffle. This is Punk, obviously, talking to Cena through this, and he's like, why hasn't anybody ever just, kicked you in the head? Because you're doing all these theatrics and everything. I mean, why not? And apparently it never occurred to Cena, so he went for it. And, lo and behold, great moment.
That sounds. I've never seen anything of this. The StarCast interviews. They've done like 3 or 4 of these events now, haven't they?
Yeah.
With lots of interviews and so on. I've seen the odd clip, but never watched anything all the way through. It's something I'm going to have to check out. I think it seems very interesting. Yeah, and we get a big running knee strike to Cena's face as well, don't we? That looks like it's done some serious damage there, because they show on a replay, he proper clocks John Cena with his knee there, doesn't he?
It's more than snug. It was more. It looked brutal. Yeah.
Yeah. We see John Cena's version of the STF, which is... anyone who's heard me on any show before is fully aware that I bloody despise that.
Since
we end up,
John.
Yeah, exactly. We end up with a pretty cool exchange where they're going for the AA, then they go to sleep, then the STF, then into a submission from Punk, into an AA again. Which leads to a really close 2 count, and the crowd just explode again when Punk actually kicks out of Cena's finisher there. Cena's top rope leg drop is a move that it looks clumsy, it looks not quite right, but somehow it just works, and I really like it.
Yeah, he doesn't bust it out a whole lot.
No,
but like in the big moments, he does, and. Yeah, I've never really thought about it looking very clumsy. Maybe it's the jean shorts. I don't know.
Possibly, yeah.
But him flying through the air to do a leg drop on a standing or bent over opponent isn't the thing that you like immediately associate John Cena with. But like you said, he does it effectively well.
Yeah. I think Cena... A lot of the things Cena does is kind of looks clunky and slightly off somehow. Like when he does a suplex, for example, a vertical suplex, he doesn't grab the trunks. He almost does a fisherman suplex with the leg each time and stuff. It's always not exactly how you'd picture it, but it all kind of works for him, I think.
Yeah, it's just a different way of doing things, right? Like, you don't have to use the dryer. You can just hang up your clothes on, like the clothes hangers, right? Like, it's just different ways of doing things, I guess. A bit odd, maybe, but you could do it.
I've done between chain wrestling, this show, the SJP Wrestling Podcast, and a few other shows I've guested on, I've done over 100 podcasts. I don't think I've ever heard anyone use drying clothes as a metaphor for any form of wrestling before. So that's a new one for me. So well done, Tanner. That was brilliant.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I don't know why I went there either, but
it kind of works.
Just like the John Cena moves, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just clunky, like
full circle. There we go.
There we go. Finally, Punk hits the go to sleep, which sadly sends John Cena to the outside, which is when we get Vince McMahon and old Johnny Ace arriving. Cena cinches on the STF, and we get almost a tease for the Montreal screw job, don't we, where Vince McMahon's screaming for the bell, which I thought was a nice little throwback, because you could see this sort of thing happening in the sort of thing he would do, obviously, because he's got previous. So but good old superhero John, he won't have that, will he? That's not how things are going to go down on his watch. So he hops out the ring, gives Laurinaitis a bit of a slap, shouts at McMahon, climbs back in the ring, and gets nailed with a go to sleep on the way back in for a massive reaction from the fans as the referee counts to 3.
Yeah. And again, this is all in the backdrop of CM Punk's contract expiring, and if he wins the title, he threatened, that he's going to take it with him, that he's, that it's his, and he's not letting anybody have it back for any reason. So all the while throughout this show, with it being a partisan Chicago crowd, with Michael Cole crowing on commentary about all the horrors of CM Punk and how he's brainwashed millions of children and your friends around the world into liking him. I think what this does is it just created that little bit of excitement, that little bit of anarchy almost of we have no idea what's going to happen now because this does not happen. We're used to LOL, John Cena wins at the end. This time he didn't do it. And now Punk's got this title. He's talked about doing all these things. And his contract in story is very much up at this point. And he runs through the crowd. He holds up the title, and he's running around the ring and holding up the title. And it's just a very interesting moment where nobody really knows exactly what to make of it, except the crowd in Chicago have fully embraced this.
Yeah, definitely. Punk celebrating. And it is that thing. I remember watching the show live and thinking, well, what do they do here? Where, unbeknown to most of us, Punk had actually re-signed a contract. His contract was due to expire on this day, in reality, but he'd re-signed shortly before.
The day of is what he has said. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we didn't know this. We're thinking, well, where do we go from here? What happens now? Well, this is surreal. And then McMahon starts calling for Alberto Del Rio to come down and cash in his briefcase. Mm-hmm. So straight away, I'm sat at home in my armchair thinking, right, that's how they're going to do it then. Fair enough. Mm-hmm. A little bit disappointed. So Del Rio jumps in the ring just to be greeted by one of CM Punk's feet straight in his face. Yeah. Punk grabs the belt, blows McMahon a kiss, waves to everyone, ta-la, and off he goes. And it made Monday Night Raw the following day absolute must-watch television. Mm-hmm. When Punk didn't turn up and they kind of didn't really acknowledge what was going on, and they set up a tournament to crown a new champion without really mentioning Punk too much. It made the following week must-see television. And then when Punk finally did arrive, again, that made the following week must-see television. And it's just not that way anymore for me. There was cliffhangers on the end of each episode. There was drama. There was real story. There was a real reason to have to tune in. You could not miss Monday Night Raw because of what was going on with CM Punk, Vince McMahon, John Cena, and so on. And for me, that just makes this pay-per-view spectacular. It makes this whole CM Punk, the Summer of Punk story amazing. And I just loved everything about wrestling at this point in my life, Tanner.
Mm. Oh, yeah. I mean, this was a real jumping off point, especially for the internet wrestling fan, because, CM Punk wins, yet nobody really knows what to make of it. Like outside, they don't know what the next step is. Punk previously did something very similar in Ring of Honor, where on I think his last night contracted to Ring of Honor, he won the World Championship from Austin Aries, and then he, it was hugely celebrated, and then he had the Summer of Punk, where he just defended the title, and he signed the WWE contract on the Ring of Honor title, and all this and that. So it was one of those things on very much a micro scale of like, we have no idea what Punk's going to do next. Like, what's the next step? What's the next big thing that he's going to do? And this was very much the same way, because we heard him going to small indie shows and taking the title with him, not being like, performing at them, but he would take the title to a show and he'd be in the crowd, or he'd be backstage, or they'd invite him out, whatever it is, and he would just have fun, right? Like, you just never knew where CM Punk was going to show up next. There's the infamous picture of him putting the WWE Championship in his fridge. Like, it just sitting there amongst all of his groceries. Like you just never knew what CM Punk was going to do. With this, I feel like they really rushed it to have him back when they shouldn't have. And then everything after that just seems like they didn't really know what to do. Like, they caught lightning in a bottle, and then they just freaked out and giggled and threw it, and it just exploded. This show just feels like they did everything right compared to now, where it feels like so often they don't. Yeah,
I think you're correct. As always, when we've looked back at a pay-per-view on this show, we give it an old school kind of school grading, I guess. A, B, C, D minus, whatever. Tanner, where does this sit with you, my friend? On the big scale of things, if an A plus plus or an A star is the best show you've ever seen, and an F minus is something dreadful, whereabouts?
Wrestling.
Yeah. Whereabouts does this sit with you?
Oh man, gosh, this show, like I said at the very beginning, has a very special place in my heart. Just because of me being a big fan of CM Punk, me really kind of having wrestling being brought back into wrestling, and just like really enjoying wrestling at this time and enjoying what Punk was doing and how different it was from everything else that WWE had not only been doing in 2011, but for years they were doing this same kind of crap, and it just got so old. And seeing where Punk came from, in WWE, and even before that in Ring of Honor and other like smaller promotions, it's just an overall really good show all the way through the main event. If you have fun ladder matches, obviously this has got it going on. If you're a Christian fan, you've got a really fun moment here. Like I said, the Randy Orton Christian match is highly underrated. There's really a little bit of something for everybody on this show. So while it might not be the best ever show that I've seen in my life, I feel as though there's really not much to hate on here. So I have to give it like an A+, right?
Yeah, okay. Fair enough. I've gone a touch lower, but still very, very high for a rating that I've given. I don't think I've ever gone as high as this before. I've gone A- because it is fantastic. It is brilliant. And the main event, like I said before, I'll watch 2 or 3 times a year because I just adore it. It's superb. The ladder matches, great moments. Okay, they're spot fests, fair enough. You can't tell a great story in a ladder match, I suppose, unless you're Shawn Michaels and Scott Hall. But they're both, there's enough there to entertain. The Christian match, as you said, Tanner, fantastic as well. The women's match and the Mark Henry Big Show match, it's not something I'd really rush back to watch again. So that's probably why I can't go top marks. So that kind of knocks it down a little bit. But I think A- because it is still a bloody great pay-per-view.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I've actually got a bit of a question for you. I don't know if your guests typically ask you questions, but can I ask you a question?
Yeah, crack on, far away.
All right. So a lot is made about this show and specifically about the main event. Obviously, we talked about it in relation to Punk and in relation to Cena. But did a little bit of research here, and it'd be remiss if I didn't cause a little bit of controversy by bringing up Uncle Dave. So Dave Meltzer, prior to this match, had only ranked one other match in WWE 5 stars, or rather, the most recent match that he ranked 5 stars was Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin in 1997, prior to this one here.
WrestleMania 13, that would have been, I suppose, wouldn't it?
Yes, WrestleMania 13. Yeah. Obviously, Money in the Bank 2011 is a far way away from 1997 WWF. And nowadays we tend to get the a million 5-star or 6-star matches from Dave Meltzer when he watches New Japan, right?
Yeah.
My question to you is, 10 years on, does this match still hold up, and is it deserving of this 5-star moniker?
Yeah, I think so. I think watching back today, the big thing that stands out in my memory of this match and this pay-per-view is the crowd. That makes a huge thing for me. The reaction to Punk, the reaction to Cena, the crowd during the main event, just the whole thing about it, and that atmosphere. But today I really sat and made notes of the actual match itself, as opposed to just getting carried away with what I was seeing and the emotion and the passion from the audience. And the match is much, much better than what I remembered it being for an actual in-ring product, for want of a better term. So for me, yes, I think so. For me, it deserves top marks because it's got a bit of everything. I think it's got all the high spots you would want, the false finishes, the
drama.
The drama, yeah, everything about it. I think it tells a fantastic story. It's quite a battle as well, over half an hour, which I quite enjoy. I don't like long matches for the sake of long matches, but if they're telling a good story, then I think they need enough time. I think so. I think it does warrant being up there still. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the time, I was very much like, wow, that's actually like really, really good. Like good for WWE, good for Punk. Like this might actually be like a good turning point in, like how WWE is perceived, because we're talking about not only the first time since, I almost said Undertaker, the first time since Stone Cold and Bret Hart had that no holds barred match in 1997, that they get this 5-star match and this acclaim by Meltzer, who at the time genuinely did not give a whole lot of 5-star matches, right? Maybe one a year, if at all, right? But I think
there's a level of bias with Meltzer as well, isn't there? He does come across quite anti WWE. I mean, when you look at certain matches from NXT, and other contests. I mean, the Shawn Michaels Undertaker match, for example, many people cite that as being one of the best WrestleMania matches of all time.
Yeah,
even that didn't get 5 stars. And I think there is whether it's intentional or subconsciously or something, I think there is some form of bias against WWE with his ratings.
Oh yeah, well, and everybody has their own preference and their own taste, right? Like if he does, if you like, I'm looking here on the Wikipedia page for it, which is literally titled "List of Professional Wrestling Matches Rated 5 or More Stars by Dave Meltzer."
Right.
It's a real Wikipedia. You can go and check it out. Plus, they cite all of the sources with his own pages, right? But yeah, you get a ton of like New Japan Pro Wrestling and All Japan Pro Wrestling and Ring of Honor is on here a few times. But yeah, I mean, WWE up until that point, I mean, it took them almost 2 decades to have another 5-star rating from them, and this was actually the first 5-star rated match that he put down for the 2000 aughts, or the 2010s rather. So, I mean, this is a really good, I guess, feel good thing here if you're a WWE fan, that you kind of get one over even on Meltzer for having this one. But like you go through and like you don't get another one until maybe Andrade versus Johnny Gargano at NXT, right? Like there's a ton of matches that he watches and reviews, and obviously great work for him, but for a large subsection of wrestling fans who go off of a dirt sheet's word or a podcast word like ours, hey, should I go and watch the show? Is this match worth it? What do you think of it? I mean, there's a lot of influence, and I feel like this is validation, right? This is validation for Punk. This is validation for even Cena, who I think this is his only 5-star rated match for. I would imagine so.
I'd imagine he hasn't got many.
There's not many, but yeah, no. This is I feel like this match does hold up well, even if you're used to all of the the niceties of a New Japan or an AEW. I feel like this match really does hold up well.
Yeah. I agree. I strongly suggest if anyone has not seen this, or even if you have seen it and not checked it out in a long time, go back and watch the main event, especially. Sod it, go watch the whole event. It's well worth it. I had a good just shy of 3 hours this afternoon watching that back. It was great stuff, and I'm really glad. On a couple of different reasons, really. I'm really glad to have you joining me today, Tanner, as I restart the SJP Wrestling Pod. I'm looking forward to it being with Radio Tekkers going forward. And I'm really grateful that you're here to help me start this back up again. And I'm really grateful you picked this pay-per-view as our topic, because I had a bloody great time watching it back. Do you want to just let everyone know whereabouts they can find you online, my friend?
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, and thank you for obviously inviting me again. It's been a true honor and a pleasure to be here on your restart of this journey. And like we said at the top, I knew that you and Megs made great content together on Chain Wrestling, and I was really excited at the prospect of having you on board with Radio Tekkers, and now that you're streaming on the channel and everything, it's really super exciting. And like I said, I at the end of the day, I'm just a fan not only of great content but great content creators. And when you offered this opportunity, I had to jump on board. So thank you personally for having me on.
You're very kind. You're very kind. Thank you.
So for me, where can you find me? I'm usually perusing a liquor store sometime around this. You can find me online at Twitter, on Twitter at TexasGentleman _TEXASGENTLEMAN _ I'm used to doing the Radio Tekkers one, and I just don't do my personal. But yeah, you can find me there if you want to hit me up on my personal one at TexasGentleman _ or you can also hit me up just at the regular Radio Tekkers handle, which is RADIOTEKKERS. We talk proper football. We talk about Premier League games. We do watch-alongs. We talk about news. We talk about transfers. We talk about tactics and all sorts of fun stuff. We often break down and talk about food and strange things. But it's a good time. It's your source for alternate football commentary, because we all need a break away from the norms in life from time to time. So you can find me there. And then obviously, if you're listening to this, go ahead and hit us up on the YouTube and Twitch channels for Radio Tekkers, where you can get streaming content not only for football but also chain wrestling, of course. But
yes,
that you're a part of, and 5 rounds with Mags as well. So you get a lot of great content with us.
You do, and I do really want to stress that people go and subscribe, like, all that good stuff. The Radio Tekkers, YouTube and Twitch, as Tanner explained. As he said, there's gaming content, there's football, there's UFC, there's awesome content creators there. The SJP Wrestling Podcast is going to be on that channel as well now. Chain Wrestling Live on a Monday. So much brilliant stuff coming your way. The Waiting Room with Benny and I coming soon as well, discussing our love for cheesy old late 80s sci-fi and Quantum Leap. I'm
excited to hear that one, man. I've never seen the show, so
okay,
I'm gonna have to watch along with you guys and listen back and be like, oh yeah, okay, I can see where they're going with it. Yeah.
Keep plug through season 1. There's only 9 episodes. There's some good moments, but some a bit wobbly moments as well. But when you get through season 1 and we get into season 2, that's when the show really kicks off, and I love it. It was great. But yeah, that's all the stuff that you can find on Radio Tekkers. Brilliant content creators such as Tanner himself, Magsy, Matt Willis, Carlos. It's too many to mention, mate. Too many to mention.
Yeah, we're really an all-star cast, all of us put together here, and it's a feel-good show. It's a feel-good network that anybody and everybody can fall in love with.
Exactly. There's a little bit of something for everybody. You can find me at SJP Words on Twitter, and you can find the show at SJP Wrestling Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Not gonna lie, I nearly forgot what the Twitter handle was for the show because it's been that long since I've said it. But it is there at SJP Wrestling Pod. Seek out Radio Tekkers as well at Radio Tekkers on Twitter. Follow the YouTube and everything else as well. And that, I suppose, concludes our episode today. So, Tanner, thank you so much for joining me, and to everyone else, thank you for listening. I'm losing you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me? You good?
You're breaking up quite a bit.
Okay, hold real quick.
Am I coming through okay to you?
You are now. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I got you now. You got me okay now?
Yeah, I can hear you perfect.
Why is this not working, you piece of shit?